Hi there. This is episode 3 of I Can Only Imagine Evie. And my name's Claire Louise and I'm the author of this book, which I'm releasing one episode at a time, usually at the beginning of each week. So episode 3, but this is called Author's Note on Death. And you will not believe what I am about to tell you. I can hardly believe it myself, but I am going to share it with you anyway. This week has been one of those challenging weeks. You know, the ones where you think, oh, I see where this is going. Great, that's how it's going to be, is it? Sometimes it's those times and those that are seemingly the closest to us, or those that you would never think in a million years would challenge you right at the crossover point of something big in your life, that are the most shocking. And I'm sure God felt this way in chapter 3 of Genesis too. This was one such moment, and I should have known better than to share my ideas for these episodes with this person. Despite the fact that I have known them all my life, I have experienced this, let's call it a backlash, previously, right at the point of crossing over into a place of victory. The old me would think I was showing off, even thinking that I could cross into a place of victory. However, I'm learning that we are meant to stand out, not hide away. Shine our light for all to see. I usually ask God for a word for 2026, 2025, 2024, and so on. And this year is no different. I felt prompted to ask him today what my word for this coming year would be, and clearly I heard the word breakthrough. So in doing so with my storytelling, I am beginning to get a sense of breaking through, and that is often what you will experience, the border bullies, as I call them. They aren't necessarily always others trying to stop us. They can also be doubts, hiccups, health issues, financial issues, relationship issues, and many other things, all designed to delay the coming breakthrough or victory. But God often reminds you of his promise or confirms his promise to you, as he has been me. I also see these so-called setbacks as confirmation that I am doing exactly what I am meant to be doing, and to not back down, to not turn around, do not. Focus. Just like God said to Evie in episode 2. Moving on then. For the past 3 weeks since starting my storytelling, I have been looking for my Good News Bible that I was given in Christmas 1977 by my parents. The episode I'm going to focus on today is based on chapter 3 of Genesis, and it is about death. I walked into my downstairs toilet before I started writing, and there it was, right in front of my eyes on the shelf behind the toilet. I sat down at the table in the kitchen and opened it to find that the particular page with this very chapter had been torn out. I can actually show it to you here, actually. If you look, I've just sellotaped it back in, but that page there was actually torn out. Now, you could interpret that as God saying, I do not want you to talk about this, or you could realise that the enemy doesn't want me to shine any light on this passage whatsoever. He'd much rather we all believe that God is some controlling megalomaniac who sits and watches the world in turmoil and gets some sort of kick out of it. However, bear in mind that I have not looked at this Bible for some years, and I leave it in the downstairs toilet in case anyone fancies a read, you know? But I'd forgotten that. Well, I just could not believe that the very section I am basing my story on is the very page that is missing from the Bible that I have been hunting for 3 weeks. And for the very chapter that is torn out is the one that I am speaking on today. I mean, that is just too many coincidences for it to not be a God incidence, right? I also found the torn out page folded up and tucked inside the inside cover, along with 3 to 4 other lovely little notes from one of my daughters, one of which was a prayer, and one was her noting an answer to prayer some 20 years ago. It was a special moment indeed. So God hides things for us to find, and I believe that is exactly what I feel for this very passage in chapter 3. There are hidden things that he wants to reveal to us from this passage. That is why I have decided to speak on this passage in the first person as author's narrative rather than as Evie today. Episode 4 will resume with the story through her eyes next week. So let's get into the biblical story. You can read it for yourself in a Bible. I use the New Living Translation as it's a story-like format and easier to understand. But I also use the Amplified, the Passion Translation, the Message. I'll leave it for you to decide. Basically, to summarise, if you remember in episode 1, there are 2 trees in the garden. The fruit looks really tasty on the first, and on the other is a different kind of fruit. The former is the tree of knowledge of good and evil. The latter is the tree of life. Basically, another character turns up in this story that we've not mentioned yet, called Satan. In fact, he has many other names also. To add some background, he's been thrown out of heaven, and if you read later on in the Bible, with a third of the angels, as well as him, for trying to be God, basically. Here we find him in the garden, whispering in the ear of the woman to cause doubt about what God really said to her. She responds to correct him, but then Satan, the slippery serpent, goes in for the kill. He says that she won't experience death, as God has said, if she eats from this tree. No. She'll be like God, knowing what is good and what is not good. This seems like a very good idea to the woman, and without consulting with God, she not only eats it, but gives some to Adam, the fourth I am in our story. Instantly, their eyes are opened, and they feel so ashamed of how naked they suddenly realise they are. God comes looking for them, to chat and enjoy their company as he had for, well, who knows how long. And he is deeply concerned that they are hiding from him. He asks them who told them that they were naked. Well, then the accusations start. Adam blames God for giving him the woman because she gave him the fruit. Then the woman blames the snake. Well, then they are all punished, or so it seems. They are banished from the garden, and the snake is to crawl on his belly and would be at loggerheads with the woman forever. Now, why was it so hard for me to write all that? It was hard because I have spent such a long time enjoying and meditating on how amazing the garden would have been. It breaks my heart. The thought of having to leave it, of not having that closeness to God. I can't bring myself to think about it, but this week I have had to. I've chatted to God about it at length, and my thoughts on the subject were at the forefront of my mind all week. I'd really like to share these thoughts with you, and then I will be able to continue writing Evie's story from where we left off. Firstly, in addition to the backlash earlier this week that I spoke of, I also have experienced stomach issues, old issues trying to grab my attention, financial attacks, pressures, and all kinds of distractions. But the revelation that God has been showing me through all of this has helped me immensely come to understand his heart over what happened on that late evening in the beautiful garden. Hilariously, can I also add that the backlash I experienced this week was based on the person's personal beliefs regarding women, and for that reason this person announced that they would not be reading my story, simply because I, a woman, wrote it. Well, this is a story for another time, but I would rather refer any reader wanting more information on this topic to grab the audible copy of Bill Johnson's book, Holy Spirit, Who He Is and Why We Can't Live Without Him, and also Lana Vawser's book, Women of God, Fully Alive. It is such revelatory teaching, and I highly recommend both of these books. I'm not going to add any more defence to my storytelling as a woman than this at this point, so let's move on. So let's get on with it. This is what I felt was God's heart when I poured out mine to him about how devastating I felt the whole chapter 3 of Genesis was. Firstly, I felt so sorry for God. He made this amazing garden, this amazing earth for all of us to live in. It was perfect. He had planted every detail, and the passion and love that he felt as he planned and designed it and lovingly dreamt of, well, it had built to a crescendo that he was exploding within himself. It literally was like God gave birth to everything we see when he said, "Let there be light." And not only did he give birth to all of this, to us and everything, but it was part of himself too. And he then gave it all to us to look after. As a somewhat mild comparison, how do we feel when we leave our children or something precious to us in the hands of someone else? However, because love is the greatest and God is love, he doesn't want robots. He wants relationship with us. He wanted to do the most vulnerable thing he possibly could, that anyone who truly loves has to do. He had to give choice. We can't force love. We can't use fear or anger or deals to ensure that others will fall in love and stay in love with us. I mean, as God, he totally could have done all of that and we wouldn't have been any the right wiser, would we? So that choice to either do life with him or without him, to fall into a love relationship with him, was given right at the very beginning of life as we know it. He didn't hide anything. It was all out there, plain to see. He made it clear to them. If you do this, this will happen. He already knew, though, didn't he, that we would eat from the one tree we had been told not to eat from. I mean, that was a foregone conclusion, wasn't it? It kind of had to happen. As we see our own children growing up, we all have to learn this stuff, don't we? We learn by experience, and we often learn the most important lessons the hard way. It's no good having a head knowledge of these things. We have to experience love, hate, anger, kindness, betrayal, etc. But God had the perfect plan all laid out for them. He then did the kindest thing he could. Firstly, he covered their own shame by making them clothes. Then, rather than them leaving them to experience the life they'd chosen for eternity, he placed a time limit on it. He gave us time as a gift. Then he protected them from eating the fruit of eternity, as they'd have been in this fallen situation for, well, forever basically. Then he told them they'd work the very ground they came from and give birth in pain. Now, that bit right there, I'm like, really? Really? So let's get into this, shall we? Let's get into the nitty-gritty of pain. Is it ever God-given? Well, God gives us nerves in our fingers and blood in our veins. So yeah, the potential for pain is there. When something is truly costly to us, we look after it, don't we? I mean, it sure cost God everything he dreamed of when he made us. Look at what we have done to it. I mean, they'd been handed this garden on a plate, everything perfect and to hand for them. But no, they chose to go the other route. And yet, was it wrong? His heart for them is and always has been relationship with himself and then with others, because smack bang in the middle of that is that we get to discover how much he loves us and when we love him with all our hearts. I mean, that was really all he ever wanted, God. He just wanted to have a relationship with us. And he wanted us to have an amazing life with him in a kingdom that was so beyond anything we could imagine. But, well, we just want to judge everything for ourselves, don't we? We have so much intel nowadays that we don't need God at all, really, do we? I mean, don't get me wrong, I love technology. But we have hit such heights of technology now that we are fast approaching medical breakthroughs, weather control, financial breakthroughs, etc. that, well, who needs God? God, in effect, is becoming so last season. All of this, though, is the fruit of that very first tree, isn't it? We can have it all and not need God at all. Yep, who needs silly old God? He's so outdated. I mean, we have wellness clinics and all sorts. We are even able to produce humans without God. But let's take a look at the fruit of that other tree, shall we? The fruit of God's kingdom takes away shame for a start. Guilt, bitterness, jealousy, hatred, anger, that feeling that no matter how much you bathe, how many counselling sessions, how many self-help books, how many diets, gym sessions, shopping sprees, lottery wins, identity restarts, relationships, operations, mind cleansing acts, etc., etc., that you try, you cannot shake off the feeling of death in your soul and your lightness of spirit. Well, it begins to go out and you have no idea how it all began or how to stop it. Many are discovering this. And this is really, really the amazing part. Even though God gave everything when he created the garden, the earth for us to live in, he also built in a get out of eternity jail card for free, a foolproof plan. When you get to that lowest point and you begin to ask yourself, who am I? And what am I doing here? You begin to discover I am for himself. The second I am, Father God's eternity jail-free card. Just when I was feeling so distressed this week, thinking about writing this and how awful that God gave everything for us and we messed it all up, I realised he didn't hold back with his love. He kept his love on. He had one last surprise for us. One thing that Satan and his fallen angels just didn't see coming. God lowering himself as a deity to have a spiritual son, to then birth that spiritual son that he enjoyed being with as a physical life, and allow his son's request to save us all, to be carried through and watch as we, the apple of his eye, excuse the pun, that turned our backs on him in this beautiful garden, saying, nah, you're all right, thanks. We don't need you. We don't need your precious son either. Yep, we killed him too. Do you think if you'd been where Evie or Eve was, that you'd have not eaten from the other tree? I put it to you that we do this every day, most days. We choose to live our lives without any recognition of God whatsoever. We have become so used to sat-navs and weather forecasts and the news, etc., that we have virtually no need to depend on God for anything. God, in his kindness, gave us the gift of time. Time to come to our senses. Time to unplug from the world system of the first tree and get plugged into the second tree of his kingdom system, where everything, literally everything that we are currently absolutely oblivious to and disregarding in our daily lives are the fruits of that second tree's root system or life. Love, patience, joy, goodness, gentleness, peace, faithfulness, kindness, self-control. These would be those 9 fruits I mentioned in episode 1. And these would all come from choosing God's Son, reconnected with him as the Father, and receiving the 7 spirits of God that became so freely available to us for the very great cost of Father God's very own Son's life, so we could have his spirit living in us at all times, forever, for eternity. The Lord's Spirit, wisdom, understanding, counsel, might, knowledge, and the fear of the Lord in essence. By accepting and believing that Christ was sent by God to reconnect us to himself, he was offering a free, eternal access to the tree of life. This is the root system and fruit for the kingdom that God wanted us to have right from the word go. But we have to choose. We have to begin to ask those 2 questions, 2 things. Who are we and why are we here? When we discover this, we will choose him, just as we should have from the beginning. And all that birthing, all that pain that God experienced in the garden back in Eden, and in the garden of our lives every minute of every day that we are apart from him, that he went to such lengths, even letting his son go, which would be a zillion infinity times what childbirth feels like for a woman. All that pain was for love. Love of you, love of me. And that is why love is, has always been, and will always be the very greatest of all things eternal. Thank you for allowing me to share my heart and what I feel is God's heart on chapter 3. I make no apology for my passion for what I have written. It is indeed the most precious story to tell. I actually feel I can now continue writing Evie's story now that I've got all of this off my chest and in perspective. And I have this feeling that this story is going to lead us up to the most perfect moment to disclose the final part of this story from Evie. So don't miss out. From the YouTube link, please hit the like button, subscribe and hit the bell. It's all free, and I would love for others to have the opportunity to hear Evie's story too. Thanks. Have a great week.